The sea wind carried salt and the faintest whisper of rot as Arya Stark guided her grey gelding along the broken coast road toward Lannisport. Moonlight glazed the rolling waves like hammered pewter, and every crest that rose against the blotted horizon reminded her of teeth. Great jagged lion-white teeth fit to devour the living. She kept her hood up, more for the message it sent than for warmth. Even in midsummer, the Westerlands cooled after dusk, and the cloak smelled of horse, wet wool, and the pine tar smoke of distant fisher fires. But the hood's true purpose was secrecy. She had worn other faces these past moons. A Taroshi baker's boy with saffron whiskers, a Bravosi Rati catcher who sang lascivious couplets, a Dornish foundling who never spoke at all. Tonight, she wore only her own. Though that, too, felt like a mask after so many borrowed skins. And she sensed a reckoning on the wind. 7 leagues back, where the road twisted through a granite cleft called the Widow's Mouth. She had overtaken a column of sellswords bound for the same city. They peacocked in half armor, bits of plated mail filched from dead regulars, boiled leather painted with fading sigils, lacquered staves that had never once tasted blood. Gold-cloaked deserters, by the look, men grown lean and fox-mean since King's Landing surrendered. One captain, a woman short as Arya, but twice as wide, nodded in wary greeting when their horses passed nose to tail. The column's yellow banner bore no sigil at all, only a crudely daubed lion's skull with its jaw unhinged. Every power in the realm had learned to sniff opportunity in the ashes of war, and rumor claimed Casterly, rock itself, now dangled ripe as a frost-struck apple. The lion's skull meant to bite it first. Arya thanked every old god that none of those would-be reavers had recognized her. A wolf among lions must remember its fangs, but show them only at need. The gelding snorted, shying from a tangle of driftwood that thrust across the verge like a dead man's hand. "Easy," she murmured, stroking the animal's neck. His breath plumed in silver tufts. Somewhere inland, close enough that the night still reverberated, a long keening howl sliced the hush. Nymeria, Arya thought at once, though she had not glimpsed her direwolf pack since they melted into the wolf's wood during the White Hunt. The sound froze the gelding mid-step. Arya listened, heart racing, until the echoes died within the folded hills. Only an ordinary wolf, she told herself, but the lie rang hollow. Nymeria's shadow had stalked her dreams since the long night's breaking. Sometimes she woke tasting fur, half convinced she had been running through birch groves on 4 legs instead of 2. Tonight the call seemed an omen, though of what she could not say. Ahead, Lannisport wavered like a drowned constellation where the bay lapped black against black. Gone were the saffron lanterns and proud trumpet calls that once greeted visiting fleet captains. The docks languished in half-darkness, many wharves sagging from fire damage, rope cranes dangling rope nooses. Ships still harbored, some merchants, some privateers, most little better than pirates, but trade had slowed to a sullen crawl. The Westerlands bled coin, and could not plug the wound, no matter how many taxes they wrung from lesser lords. Cersei was ashes, Jaime a ghost in the lore of peasants, who still swore they saw a golden specter at every crossroad, Tyrion an exile who would never again bow to the rock. That left only distant Lannisters of lesser branch, and Sir Kevan's legitimate heir, a boy of 9 too sickly to lift a practiced sword. 9 was old enough to die, though, and the sellswords behind Arya rode on the promise that boys do die. She reined up at a bluff overlooking the harbor. Below, torch pinpricks traced the city walls. Shabby tents sprouted like mushrooms beyond the broken eastern gate, where refugees from the Riverlands huddled in rag tents, showing ribs to the sightless gloom of night patrols. Arya dismounted and knelt, fingers combing the sparse grass for Leenhof-site headings. In Bravos, she had learned to plot infiltration paths before she ever set foot inside a target city. Lannisport's north wall looked weakest where a collapsed bell tower leaned drunkenly over the parapet, its rubble forming a crude causeway nearly to the ramparts. There the shadows pooled deepest. She felt Needle's familiar weight at her left hip, the slimmer cat's paw at her right, and the comforting rasp of dragonglass arrowheads stitched into her undercloak. Steel, shadow, silence. The words came like a prayer she had whispered since Harrenhal. Behind her, the gelding nickered in protest. "Wait here," she said, hitching him to a splintered milestone that proclaimed Casterly Rock. 6 leagues but whose paint had peeled until the letters seemed to scream. She left a half a sheaf-full feed bag swinging beneath his nose and tapped his flank. The horse responded with a resigned shake of its mane. Good. A quiet mount was worth more than a clever one. Arya slipped downslope, both heels muffled by scree. The air smelled of tallow smoke, stale piss, and overturned earth. She skirted a patrol of 4 men wearing half-helms stenciled with a red tower crowned by spear points. House Rain, resurrected only in memory, and the fantasies of rebels who thought to wear a dead man's heraldry as shield. That alone told her how rotten the lion's den had become. 30 years past, such blasphemy would earn a skinning. Tonight the guards lounged, trading jokes about lion maids whose beds they meant to sample once coin turned warm in their pockets. A ruined washhouse huddled beside a stagnant canal, its tiled roof caved where wildfire had kissed it during the night Aegon's hill poured dragons. Arya waded knee-deep through black water that stank of eel rot, emerged slick as a selkie, and scaled the bell tower's rubble ramp hand over hand. Stone rasped under her gloves. 20 feet above, she hauled onto the parapet, pressed herself belly to crenellation, and waited. Below, the sellsword column approached the main gate to parley. Bronze torches flared, shedding greasy halos. The captain's growling voice drifted up, demanding quarter for the Broken Fang Company by rights of contract. Arya tuned it out. Guards clustered yon side of the collapsed tower where she perched, leaving a blind spot behind the ramparts exactly wide enough for one slim girl. She dropped inside, silent as an owl. The wall walk reeked of seagull dung and mold. An archer's nest, abandoned, offered cover. She crouched against the inner parapet and scanned the city. Streets fanned from the harbor like veins from a heart of soot. At the core loomed the citadel of Lannisport. Lesser cousin to the Rock, but still formidable. Walls ribbed with embossed gold plates, now tarnished to old bronze. Casterly Rock itself rose beyond, a black mass jutting from the promontory west of the city, windows like molten embers. Even from here the fortress seemed alive, breathing slow, lion-heavy breaths that shook the clouds. Arya remembered Maester Luwin's lessons. Tunnels bored straight through the mountain, feasting halls carved from quartz. Veins of gold so pure the walls glittered when touched by candle flame. All that grandeur felt distant now, rumored to be half collapsed by dragons, half emptied by debt, yet its shadow still ruled. Whoever commanded the Rock commanded the West. Arya's true quarry had never been gold. Faces mattered more than coin. She had sworn oaths in darkness. A girl has no name, a girl gives the gift, and unspoken vows in starlight, before heart trees older than conquest. She had broken some, tempered others, balanced them all upon the keel of her own heart. Now the ocean of aftermath sloshed beneath that keel, threatening to swamp her. The emptiness left when Sansa rode north as queen in winter, and Jon sailed east beyond all maps, seldom closed except in motion. Vengeance had once lit her days. After vengeance came restlessness. But rest had felt like drowning. So she rode south, west, anywhere the road curved away from the familiar. And on a wind-bitten night at an inn called the Red Rooster, she overheard 2 Lannister men brag that a cousin of House Lyddon meant to press her daughter's claim to Casterly Rock, if only some champion would fight on the girl's behalf. A weak claim, they laughed, but all claims looked stronger with a blade at the throat. Arya traced the memory's contour as she moved from shadow to shadow. A drunkard's boasting, a map glimpsed upside down on a warped tavern table, a ripple of possibility like dawn on dark water. Westeros still honored the ancient right of trial by combat, and the Faith had reaffirmed that right in the Great Council after King Bran's coronation, hoping to pacify old knights too proud for the new order. If a combat might decide the Rock, then a blade might decide the West. And if that blade belonged to a wolf, perhaps the West would cease its lion's feast upon the weak. She spent the rest of the night ghosting across rooftops, mapping alley mazes, counting guard changes. Rats nibbled her boots while she huddled under an overhang and chewed smoked herring from her belt pouch. Bells tolled prime well before dawn. Their notes sounded wrong, cracked, as though the clappers had corroded. When sun finally bled over the bay, she slipped into the city proper by scaling a tailor's guild hall and dropping into a courtyard where children pounded flax with wooden mallets. No one looked twice at the muddy girl hefting a bundle of winter cloaks toward the fuller's vats. In daylight, Lannisport resembled a hollow marble statue. Fine on the surface, hollowed out behind the face. Porticos still sported intricately carved lions, but ivy strangled their curls. Broad avenues of pink granite now hosted little more than beggars crouched around coal braziers, warming hands blistered by the previous night's chill. A hawker near the Maiden's Fountain called stale honey cakes, lion claws, and sold them 3 for a copper, though ants infested the tins. Arya bought one anyway and tossed it to a ragged boy with frost-bright eyes. He devoured it in 2 bites and fled, glancing back only once to flash a grin. A grin like Rickon's, she thought, before the memory stabbed. By early afternoon, she reached the southern caravanserai, a sprawl of paddocks, stables, and counting houses, where outland merchants lodged under watchful eyes. There, she found the Broken Fang Company again. The captain, the squat woman with scars like raised deltas on both cheeks, barked orders while squires red-shod their destriers. Arya studied them from the awning of a tanner's stall, testing names and stories on her tongue. She needed passage through the city gates on the morrow, and a pretext to approach the rock without drawing suspicion. Sel's words made convenient storms to sail beneath. Chaos flattered invisibility. She waited until a groom led the captain's dapple stallion toward the smithy, then followed, slipping inside as bellows roared. The forge interior swam with heat. The captain stood alone, arms folded, watching sparks dance from the anvil where a bronzesmith hardened horseshoes. Arya pulled back her hood. The woman's eyes narrowed. "I know your face," the captain rasped. "Or one like it." "Many like it, I'm sure," Arya answered. "But not one that killed 8 of your men at the crossways." Suspicion furrowed the scarred cheeks before giving way to a laugh like gravel. "You're a bold wolf girl. Bold or mad? Which banners do you serve?" "None." She stepped closer, letting the furnishly light lick across her features. "But I know a thin claim when I hear one. You march tonight for the rock. I can help you through its belly." The captain spat. "The rock needs no sewer rats. We'll present our contract at the gate and let coin speak. Coin never speaks louder than blood. Faith militants stand behind those gates, and they pledge to bar any free company whose captains hold debts in King's Landing." She paused, tilting her head. "You owe 150 dragons to the Iron Bank, do you not? Interest grows quick as weeds." The captain's dark eyes flared. "How?" "That's not important. I can open a back passage, but I won't do it for free." Arya slid a thin silver stag across the anvil. It hissed on the hot iron. "I require escort to the rock itself. Once inside, I go my way. You plunder what halls you please." The woman weighed her. Finally, she spat again. "An hour before moonrise. Meet us at the dwarf statue on the salt walk. Bring no one." Arya nodded, though she never intended to meet them. Their arrival would create the ruckus she needed, and ruckus fed ghosts. Already her mind traced the rock's rumored cisterns, those ancient watercourses a clever dwarf once widened into smugglers' tunnels centuries before. Tyrion had boasted of them in a brothel in King's Landing, boasted to Lord Baelish's nightingale spies, never guessing the little birds repeated every feathered word. Arya remembered, and memory sharpened like whetted steel. She returned to the city's upper tiers and rented a cot in a fallen sept converted into a flophouse. Stained-glass windows still arched overhead, though most colored panes lay shattered on the flagstones. Crimson and cerulean shards glimmered in candle pools like dragon scales. She slept curled beneath her cloak, dreaming of wolves hunting lions beneath a bleeding moon. When she woke, dusk painted the pews in bruised shades. The air tasted of wax smoke and damp wool. She left unnoticed. Instead of the salt walk, Arya threaded north toward the Rock's Causeway, a narrow neck of pale marble bridging cliff to Colony Isle. Lanterns fluttered at sentinel posts. She counted 6 guards at the gatehouse, 3 men in rusted lion helms, 2 faith-militant zealots with 7 pointed stars sewn upon hauberks, and a lanky youth who kept shifting his weight from heel to heel, hand never far from the horn at his bell. The Sellsword Company's diversion would come from the city's east gate. These 6 would hear the uproar and look back, leaving moments of confusion. Enough. She melted into a patch of elm saplings clinging to the cliffside and waited. Night rose slow as candle wax dripping up the sky. Stars pricked luminous holes, each one a dead god's eye. When the first discordant bells rang behind her, somewhere near the caravanserai, she tensed. Shouts floated across the harbor. A column of smoke unrolled above rooftops. The Sellswords had started early. Perfect. At the gatehouse, the lanky youth cupped his ear. 1 lion guard barked an order. 2 others hustled toward the parapet to glimpse the source of commotion. Only the zealots remained attentive, gripping their short spears. Arya drew a breath that tasted of iron and salt. Needle slid free with a whisper. She darted from shadow to buttress, scaled a bare stone buttress using fissures worn by gulls, and swung onto the outer arch while the guards craned seaward. 1 zealot, half-turned, too slow. Arya's left hand clamped his mouth. Her right buried needle through the seam beneath his gorget. She lowered him silently. His spear clattered, but the thunder of distant fire bells smothered the sound. The second zealot managed a soundless gasp before she opened his throat with the cat's paw. Blood pooled like warm pitch. Arya crouched, heartbeat steady. 3 heartbeats later, the lanky youth rounded the corner, eyes wide. He glimpsed the corpses and froze. Arya beckoned him with 1 finger. "Choose," she whispered. "Silent or dead?" Terror brightened his gaze, but he nodded. She pointed toward the causeway. "Run. Speak of shadows if you like, but not of wolves." He bolted, sandaled feet clapping unevenly on stone. Arya dragged the bodies into a nook beneath the stairs and slipped inside the gatehouse's inner courtyard. From there, a grand tunnel angled up through the base of Casterly rock, torchlit and echoing with panicked commands. Squires, maids, and lowlier servants scuttled like ants. The Sellsword's early assault had spooked the hive. Perfect again. She blended with fleeing servants, keeping her head down, clutching a burlap sack she'd filled with broken crockery to masquerade as kitchen waste. Farther up, at the Hall of Echoes, where 3 galleries met under a vaulted quartz ceiling, a pair of Lannister men shouted at each other over the din. "All levies to the Sarsfield Gate." "There is no Sarsfield Gate, fool. That's in the city." "Then where in the 7 hells is the attack?" Arya slipped past them and found the spiral stairs that sank into the rock's underbelly. Old mines half-flooded, abandoned lodes, crypts where the bones of casters lay entombed beside the first Lannisters. She descended until torchlight bowed to damp gloom. Rats fled her steps. The air grew chill, and water dripped with a rhythm like a distant smith hammering a single nail forever. Deep in the bowels she located the smuggler's tunnel, a modest fissure masked by rubble, wide enough that a dwarf might ease his belly through, though a tall man must crawl. Arya peeled away loose stones and crawled. The passage angled upward so steep she feared it would spit her out a cliff face, but instead it terminated behind a tapestry in what smelled like a wardrobe. Dust clogged her lungs. She cut a slit in the faded lion emblazoned on the cloth and peered. A lady's solar lay beyond, airy and candlelit, though the hour neared midnight. A pale girl sat at a desk heaped with scrolls. She wore widow's black, though her hair, Lannister gold, hung loose about her shoulders. Arya recognized her. Sorel Lannister, daughter of Sir Kevin's second son, rumored claimant to the rock since her brother's cough grew mortal. A fragile bird, the kind hunting cats devour. The girl read aloud in a whisper, practicing signatures. "I, Sorel of House Lannister, do extend guest right to Lady. No, to Sir. Oh, bugger it all." She crumpled the parchment with a sob. Arya slid from behind the tapestry, soundless as down. The girl stiffened as if pricked. Perhaps some lion instinct sensed the wolf behind her. When she turned, Arya stepped into candlelight. "Who?" "Someone who can keep you alive," Arya said. She moved closer, one palm raised. "Guards will not reach this chamber soon. Sellsword presses every gate. The rock is weaker than you've been told." Sherelle backed against the desk. Candles jittered. If you came to ransom me, no, I have nothing to. I came to offer a choice. Arya's voice felt detached, cold. Declare for me in the Hall of the 50 Hearths at dawn and name trial by combat to decide the lordship. I will champion you. The girl's chin trembled. What madness, champion me? I have no right. My uncle insists. Uncles can be unmade. Arya touched the point of needle to a parchment, pinning it to the wood. Say yes, and in 2 days' time you'll be Lady of Casterly Rock in all but name. Say no, and the Broken Fang Company will carve their own lordship from your corpse. Silence stretched. Outside, a distant boom? Catapults? Shook dust from ceiling joists. Finally, Sherelle swallowed. Who are you? A friend, Arya lied. And a wolf. Wolves keep packs. Choose. Sherelle Lannister shut her eyes. When they opened, they shone with something like resolve through the tears. Yes. She breathed. Arya sheathed needle. Good. Sleep while you can. Tomorrow you become bait. She extinguished all but one candle and slipped back through the tapestry, sealing the slit with a ragged thread of pitch. In the darkness behind the cloth, she allowed herself one trembling exhalation. The girl's yes tasted like a chapter turning. Hours dwindled until dawn. Arya navigated stairwells and servant shafts, laying mental breadcrumbs for her return path. She rested atop a high turret widow walk and watched the eastern sky bruise from violet to rose. Smoke still drifted above Lannisport, but the fires had eased. Sellsword seldom wasted powder once looting began. Below, the castle courtyards bustled with slapdash musters. She spotted the captain of Broken Fang striding through a postern in half armor, bloodied mace dangling, her dapple stallion lamed. The woman's angry gestures suggested the city fight had not gone as planned. She would try the rock next. Good luck, Arya thought. Though luck is just death in a different coat. When sunlight finally spilled across the Widowwalk stones, Arya descended to the lower landing of the 50 Hearths. The hall's great doors, oak banded with red gold and hammered lions, stood ajar for the first time in weeks. Inside, banners drooped above cold hearths, and courtiers argued in clusters. She lingered behind a column observing. Kevin's widow Lady Dorna reigned at the dais, her steel-gray hair bound in a spidery coif, her gaze sharp as any blade. Squires scuttled messages, each more frantic. No one saw the short young woman in plain wool slip behind a throne that once belonged to Tito's Lannister. Sherelle entered hours later, escorted by 2 wavering guards. She looked younger than her 15 years, cheeks splotched, eyes ringed with sleepless purple. Yet, she advanced to the dais, kneeling at Dorna's feet. The hall fell still. "My lady aunt," she said, voice surprisingly clear. "I assert my claim to Casterly Rock under the laws of descent. With respect to Sir Gerald of the Golden Tooth." She nodded toward a broad knight who bristled. "And to other cousins present, I invoke my right to trial by combat to settle all contention." A collective inhale sucked the hall's air. Arya felt its pull from behind the throne. Lady Dorna's eyes went flinty. "Combat? You are but a child. It seems children must fight, else die," Sherelle answered, echoing Arya's coached line. "Will you deny me lawful remedy?" Murmurs cascaded. The faith militant representative, a squat septon with ink-high-spattered fingers, cleared his throat and cited recent edicts confirming the right. Challenge could not be refused except by the crown. And the crown, far away in King's Landing, had troubles enough. Dorna had no choice. "Whom will you name as champion?" she demanded at last. Sherelle's gaze slid to the shadows beneath the dais. "I have one in mind." Arya stepped into torchlight, pulling back her hood. 100 faces registered confusion, recognition, alarm. The lion and the wolf had at last come eye to eye. "Name me," she said, voice carrying to every corner of the 50 Hearths. "Arya of House Stark, Sword of Winterfell, offers her blade." Gasps erupted. Somewhere a wine cup shattered. The Knight of Golden Tooth laughed, a harsh bark. "The little wolf thinks to play at lions?" Arya met his stare without blinking. I play at nothing. I fight. Silence returned, thick as smoke. Sherelle lifted her chin. I name Arya Stark as my champion. Dorna touched the seven-pointed star at her throat. A motion more habit than faith. So be it, she said bleakly. At dawn, 3 days hence, in the champion's yard. 3 days. Enough time to plant fear like seeds in every heart. Enough time for Arya to study her foe and sharpen old grudges. She felt the hall's weight shift, as if the keep itself had drawn breath. When the session dissolved into arguments and furious scribes, Arya slipped away. She found a niche above a servant's stair and watched, unseen, as lion lords jostled to protest, and septons scuttled to the ravenry. None noticed the wolf crouched in darkness, counting them, learning them, deciding which would die. Far below, sea wind wailed through rifted battlements, sounding much like Nymeria's call. A promise. A warning. A song. Arya smiled with no joy at all. The real hunt had finally begun. Oni. Jenny Tune. No. Continue the 5,000 words or more. No subtitles. Write narrative script only, no subtitles. Inya. A. Night folded itself around the rock like a vast black cloak stitched with distant star gems. Yet neither sleep nor stillness ventured near the keep. Arya prowled its spine of galleries and oubliettes, mapping a terrain stranger than Winterfell's crypts, yet rousing the same cold, ancestral thrill. Casterly rock groaned in her bones. A wary beast sniffing the scent of wolf, questioning whether to bare its claws or feign indifference. Every corridor breathed stories, old conquests etched into gold-flecked marble, new cracks spidering through once flawless vaults. She touched the veins where quartz met iron ore, and thought of maesters who claimed stone remembered. Let it remember this, she mused, a Stark stalking a lion's dreaming heart. She began her vigil at the chapel of the Three Maidens, where half-melted candles drooped like mourning daughters over a shattered altar. There a pair of faith militant novices fidgeted beside icons, worrying their rosaries, jumpy as hares. Arya drifted within earshot, hidden by pew shadows, and gleaned that the High Septon himself had dispatched a blessing to the rock. Though whether it sought to calm or condemn the coming combat, neither novice could say. They fretted that Sir Amory Hill, famed tourney champion from Golden Tooth, would surely face the wolf girl and break her like kindling. Else the realm risked mockery. One novice wagered a copper. She would not last a single pass. The other shook his head and invoked the crone's wisdom. Wolves cornered among lions grew devilishly sharp. Arya let them chatter until fear thickened their tongues, then slid out silent as yesterday's candle smoke. Knowledge now gleamed in her pocket like a stolen gem. Sir Amory Hill, a tall brute rumored to wield a flanged mace carved with the 7 virtues. She pictured the mace head crushing bone and felt the old taste of Tombsday in her throat, the day she watched Polliver die on Needle's Point. That kill had come easy. This would not. But bones did break all the same. At dawn she sparred in the dusty practice yard atop the western bastion. When fog still caressed merlins and gulls screamed without seeing. No one else rose so early save Donal of House Myatt, the rock's aged master-at-arms. Half lame from an old tourney fall, yet still spry enough to bully raw recruits. Donal recognized her first thrust. Bravo sea water dance, the whispering thrust, and spat a tobacco streak before offering a crooked grin. He thrust an iron-bound staff into her palms and bade her come at him. They traded blows until the mist burned away, and her wrists rang. Donal never spoke save to grunt approval when her feints grew audacious, or chastise when overconfidence left her flank open. At last he tapped the staff's tip against her heart. "You're fast," he rasped. "Fast as any cat I trained. Faster than your father was at your age if rumor speaks true, but speed's naught if you meet a hammer. Sir Amory's no dancer, he's an avalanche. Sidestep too late and you'll be gravel. Sidestep too late and you'll be gravel." He tossed her a half-helm dented so many times its ridges felt like a map of old tragedies. "Wear that tonight and again tomorrow. Sleep in the bloody thing if you must. Teach your neck to bear the weight before the mace does it for you. Then demand her." But she obeyed, and by nightfall, Her shoulders throbbed like smashed beehives. Still, she practiced footwork in the echoing hall of 100 coils. A disused banquet chamber where pillars wound upward like petrified serpents, until sweat slicked the flagstones. Between sets, she chose vantage points. High clerestory ledges from which arrows might one day loose. A colonnade of blind niches perfect for lurking. A mosaic depicting the first Lord Lannister wresting gold from a slain lion, its eyes 2 rubies ripe for theft when no sentries watched. She stole one for luck, left the other for fate. The second morning dawned sharp and windless, gulls riding unseen thermals. Rumors swept the rock faster than rats. The sellswords had pulled back to the outer fish markets, licking wounds. 23 dead, 50 wounded, and their captain sought parley. Lady Dorna refused, ordering scorpions mounted on the seaward balustrades. Arya watched from a shadowed arch as workmen cranked torsion arms, her mind measuring arcs, tension, strain. Ziga weapons told stories of patience. They asked nothing but time and rope. Yet inside the rock, time frayed. Lannister vassals whispered behind cuirass shields in the bailey, each seeking to calculate tomorrow's odds. If the wolf slew Hill, what then? If the lion prevailed, would the sellswords still dare the walls? Alliances shifted like loose stones on the cliff paths. Step poorly and fall. That night, Lord Hamish Sarsfield held an emergency war council in the garnet-tiled solar, and Arya, clad in servant browns and carrying a flagon of spiced wine, slipped inside. She poured while they argued. Sir Gerald and Sir Amory roared about honor. Lady Dorna warned of starvation stores. Septon Vardis prayed for the Seven's mercy, and old Maester Morian murmured that children now ruled realms, hinting Bran's crown across the narrow sea might not extend forever. When the flask ran dry, she bowed. But Sir Gerald, drunk past caution, clutched her sleeve. "You," he slurred, breath heavy with nutmeg and fear. "Does the wolf girl tremble? You serve her, aye. Tell her we bury pups beneath golden stones. Tell her lions feast on northern marrow." Arya's smile never reached her eyes. "I serve everyone, my lord, but I've never seen a lion swallow a blade and live." She slipped away before comprehension dawned on his ruddy face. In the corridor, she dropped the wine jug and sprinted to the surgery where Sorel sat pale upon a cot. The girl was wrapped in furs too heavy for summer, sweating, eyes bright with feverish resolve. "They say I am mad," Sorel whispered. "But I remember my father's stories. Lan the Clever stole this rock thrice by wit, once by whisper, once by wife, once by wife, once by weeping. Perhaps I am his daughter after all." Arya pressed a cool cloth to her brow. "He enjoyed many daughters, and as many endings. Choose yours." Sorel grabbed Arya's wrist. "When you fight, end it quickly. I fear for you." "Fear sharpens me," Arya said. "And I have teeth they have not yet seen." She leaned closer. "If the gods spin a different thread, and I fall, flee north at once. Ask the first crow you meet which road carries wolves. They will find you safe." Nimhes or. Tears welled, but the girl nodded, shoulders squared. Arya left her sleeping and returned to the practice yard, where Donal awaited under lantern light. 2 blunted maces laid at his feet. They trained till dawn rimmed the sea in amber, and her arms quivered with every parry. Donal finally lowered his weapon. "That'll do," he wheezed. "Mind your left knee. You favor it when you pivot. He'll aim there once he sees. And remember, height gives power but belly breeds pride. Cut low, cut fast. He won't expect a wolf to hunt the ankle." Benetton. At sunrise, bells pealed sluggishly, as if the metal itself yawned. Every soul within the rock trudged to the champion's yard. Once, the space had hosted tourneys for King Aerys, its banners whirling like dares to the sky. Now shattered lances littered the stands like white driftwood. Sand-covered bloodstains older than Bran's reign. The yard's perimeter formed a perfect viewing square hemmed by stone benches. Soldiers lined walls 3 men deep, helms glinting dull as tallow. On the raised dais, Lady Dorna presided, flanked by Septon Vardis and Maester Morian. Sorel sat at Dorna's left, fragile but resolute in a black silk gown trimmed with unadorned gold. Sir Emery Hill entered first, gorgeting undone breastplate that caught morning glare like new mint coin. His beard had been oiled and braided with silver charms. The flanged mace rested on his shoulder like a beloved pet. He saluted the dais with a flourish, then swung the mace one-handed, striking the air thrice, each blow a thunder sign. Lannister banners rippled. Fools cheered, grateful for bravado. Then Arya stepped into the yard. She wore no armor, save Donal's battered half-helm, and a light jack of boiled leather, sewn with studs craving to be swords. Needle glimmered slender at her hip. In her offhand, she balanced a buckler little wider than a tankard lid, freshly blackened to drink glare. Murmurs swept the benches like wind in barley. Some laughed. Some spat. Others narrowed eyes, sensing storms. The High Septon's envoy read the articles of combat. Each champion would wield chosen arms. No quarter given. Combat to submission or death, unless one sponsor withdrew claim mid-fight. Sponsors remained. Sorel's knuckles blanched as she clutched the rail. Sir Gerald nodded grim approval to Hill. A hush fell when the envoy raised his staff. The staff thudded down. The duel began. Arya did not rush. She circled, knees flexed. Left knee exactly as Donal had warned. Hill advanced heavy-footed, mace tracing lazy circles. The flanges glimmered with inlaid rubies. Each blow would crack shield or skull. He swung, testing range. Sand plumed where the mace struck, spraying her hem. She stepped inside the cloud and flicked needle toward his chin, testing too. Iron scraped beard rings before he jerked back, surprised. The crowd gasped, as if a princess had cursed. Arya retreated, weight on toes. Second pass. Hill feinted left, then lunged right, mace descending. She dived, shoulder rolling under the blow, buckler lashing his knee. Metal rang taut. He stumbled. Needle hissed upward, slicing a ribbon of flesh along his thigh. Blood spattered sand. Hill bounded clear, roaring more in insult than pain. He feigned a laugh. "Pup bites," he bellowed, voice booming. "But pups tire." Arya measured her breath. 1, 2. Like water dancers taught, then sprang. Her left knee led. Right foot pivoting late. Hill anticipated too slow. His mace whooshed inches behind her spine. She slid along his blind side and struck with needle's pommel into the soft meat above his gauntlet. Knuckle bones crunched. Hill cursed, fingers spasming. The mace drooped momentarily. Enough. Needle's tip darted, aiming the gap between spalder and breast. A crash of mailed forearm blocked her, but momentum carried him backward to the yard's low wall. Dust blossomed. Lannister knights shouted warnings. Hill's eyes flared with sudden respect. He spat blood. She had cut his lip. They circled again. Arya feigned a limp, disguising the tremor in her thigh from the roll. Hill pressed, eager, jabbing haft-butt at her face. She batted it aside, slid back. He lunged high. This time she dove, cut left, then pivoted, left knee complaining, and slashed the back of his calf where leather met greave. Blood rained. The crowd reacted in rolling thunder. First disbelief, then admiration, then malice. Hill dropped to one knee. He fumbled for a dagger, but only grazed its hilt before she trapped his wrist with the buckler rim and twisted hard. Ligaments popped. His scream became a stunned croak. Arya smelled victory's copper tang but did not close. She backed 2 paces, steel poised. Give lions time to think they might live. Survival's mirage made fools reckless. Hill lurched upright, mace arm shaking. Sand clotted the gash in his calf. He bared teeth red as feast mulled wine. "Little bitch," he hissed, voice ragged. "I'll mount your head on the gates." She shrugged. "You'll need legs for that." He charged, a juggernaut leaning on momentum and rage. Arya waited an eye blink longer than sane, then sidestepped right, knee bending, upper body folding away. Needle flashed across his inside elbow, severing a tendon. The mace flew. Hill's body momentum carried him forward into the wall. He struck stone with a bass crack. Silence fell like wolf fur snow. Arya approached, slow, gloved hand gripping dagger unseen by the crowd. Hill tried to rise, but arms betrayed him. She placed needle's point at his larynx. His breast heaved. Sand clung to his beard, glittering. "Yield," she told him. Murder flickered behind his eyes, then drowned in red froth. He spat on her boot. Arya traced a shallow line along his throat, blood beading. He gagged. She spoke again, softer. "Yield and live, or die and be forgotten." A rasp like wind through threads. "I yield." The staff's relay thundered. Septon Vardis cried the verdict. The benches erupted. Some cheers, more stunned mutters. Lady Dorna's jaw clenched, but she rose. Forced courtesy. Shirel wept openly, hands clasped in prayer or shock. Arya stepped back as healers rushed in. Only then did she feel the tremble in her left knee, the fatigue in her sword arm. She breathed slow, counting heartbeats. Flares of pain radiated where Hill's mace haft had grazed ribs. Bruises would purple come dusk. Yet she remained unbroken. She had faced the avalanche and tunneled through. Septon Vardis summoned both sponsors to center. Shirel knelt to accept the victor's crown. A wrought gold circlet bearing twin curled lionesses, and placed it in Arya's hands. Protocol demanded the champion present the token to the claimant. Arya knelt before her. "My blade served," she said, voice hoarse. "Now your reign begins. Guard it well." Shirel lifted the circlet to her brow. Her shoulders squared. In that moment she seemed taller, the gold reflecting sunrise as though a new day hatched beneath her skin. Lady Dorna advanced stiffly. "The matter stands resolved," she declared. "By ancient law, Shirel of House Lannister is Lady of Casterly Rock, all rights and revenues thereof. Let the ledgers amend." Her tone curdled each word like spoiled cream. Arya bowed to the dais and turned, intent on slipping away before politics sank their claws. Yet Maester Morian intercepted her at the arch. Parchment sealed with green wax. "From King Bran's court," he whispered. "It arrived this morn under Raven's wing, addressed to one Arya Stark." She frowned, accepting. The seal bore the imprint of a weirwood leaf veined in silver. She broke it with a thumb, unfolding neat lines penned in her brother's spidery script. "Sister, the winds whisper of your path. Should duty permit, come home. A threat old as the first dawn wakes beyond the sunset sea. We have need of every wolf. Bran the Broken, Lord of the Six Kingdoms, King of all men, Lord of Winter." Arya's pulse stuttered. Beyond the sunset sea, the lands where Nymeria's descendants roamed, where legend spoke of black-blooded krakens that swallowed moons. Bran would not warn lightly. Footsteps approached. Shirel, still flanked by shaken guards, her golden circlet tilted slightly askew. "You depart now, don't you?" she asked in a hush. "The sea calls," Arya said, folding the letter. "And wolves answer." Shirel drew a thin chain from her neck, bearing a small obsidian lion carved so delicately its mane seemed aflame. "My father gave this for luck," she said. "It has served. I think it belongs to you now." "No-nt." Arya took the charm. "I fight better without lions." But she pocketed it all the same. Gifts held weight. Stories weighed more. Outside the yard she found Donal leaning on his staff, pride shining brighter than the tear tracks he pretended were sweat. He inclined his head. "Your father would grumble you dishonored house Stark stepping beneath lion banners, but he'd smile when no one watched." He pressed a leather pouch into her hand. "Dragonbone toggles and wind-dried herbs. For bruises," he grunted. "And for journeys." She clasped his calloused fingers. "Thank you." Then she was gone, threading through corridors while Lannister horns blared for their new lady. She climbed the same smuggler's tunnel, tasting dust and freedom, and emerged at cliff's edge where the western sea bellowed below. Her gray gelding nickered, half wild from 2 nights tethered among gull cries. Arya stroked his muzzle. In Lannisport, Broken Fang Company had withdrawn to refit. Their captain stood upon the city rampart, arms folded, gaze fixed upon the rock's banners rehoisted. When she spotted Arya leading her horse across rubble, Recognition lit her scarred face. She raised one gloved fist. Salute or threat? And Arya returned it with 2 fingers to brow. Sailors goodbye. The Sellswords would march east by sunset. Their grievance lay spent. A single duel had saved countless conscripts from dying nameless beneath crenellations. Strange how blood contained multitudes. Spill a drop and spare a river. By midday, Arya reached the Widow's Mouth Pass, where rowan trees birthed red clusters bright against slate sky. She paused to scan the ridge. To the north, Storm's drum peaks pierced clouds like wolf fangs. To the south, the lion banners stirred weakly in new wind. Shirel would need claws to hold that throne. But claws grow fastest under threat. Arya mounted. The gelding snorted, eager. She patted his neck and urged him east, toward River Run, and the Trident beyond, where ravens might bear her farther messages. The letter weighed her pocket, heavy as a crown. One she would never wear yet could never drop. Beyond the sunset sea, Bran wrote. Something waking. She recalled old Nan's hushed tales of strange children carved from coral. Of ice that sang songs no man could hear. Of sky islands adrift like silent galleys. She smiled, a hard, bright smile. The world still kept mysteries enough for one wolf. And somewhere far behind, in halls newly tended, lions learned to guard their throats against knives, no wider than dawn's first whisper. Kakei. Gayu. Continue the story, 5,000 words or more, no subtitles. Write script, only no subtitles. Yoa. Kami. Undamajim daddy. Mist coiled across the widow's mouth, as if the pass itself breathed, exhaling memories of dead kings and forgotten battles in slow silver tendrils. Arya guided her gelding beneath the bowing rowans, hooves muffled on a carpet of wet needles. The air smelled of rain yet to fall and ironstone still slick from night's condensation. No patrol banners fluttered here. Only the ragged sigh of wind through branches and the distant rush of a mountain stream swollen by summer thaw. Every sound struck her keen senses as cleanly as a whetstone. One stray pebble clattering down slope, a raven's caw echoing against the granite flanks, the gelding's steady breaths keeping rhythm with her own. It felt like her first true silence since setting foot in the Westerlands. She dismounted at a bend where the path divided. One arm winding east toward River Run, the other climbing south into the crag hinterlands. A milestone lay toppled, its runes half erased by moss and time. She crouched and traced the faint grooves, searching for guidance older than memory. Casterly, one glyph whispered. Sea Stone, murmured another. Sea Stone. The name tugged at her, stirring a half-remembered tale told by a summer islander pilot aboard the Shy Maid, a black fortress on the westernmost shore where priests of the drowned god once listened to the heartbeat of the world. Bran's ravens spoke of a threat stirring beyond the sunset sea. Perhaps Seastone meant to echo. Or perhaps the stone only rested, dreaming of high tide. Stone did that sometimes. She had watched Winterfell's walls sleep and wake by firelight for years. The gelding nickered, shaking rain from its mane. She stroked his warm neck and let him crop upon tufted grass, while her eyes followed the crag spur ascending into cloud, a route few travelers dared. The South Trail, she knew, skirted abandoned copper mines, then threaded the Sheepshead Hills before rejoining the King's Road near Deep Den. Without pursuit, River Run might be the wiser path, flat, swift, well supplied. Yet Bran's letter weighed her pocket like a lodestone reading only west. And the seas lay west. She knelt, palmed the soil, and let instinct speak. Damp, dot. No fresh tracks, no shod prints deeper than her own horses, no broken twigs bruised with sap. Whatever dogs Lady Dorna might unleash to quiet rumors of a Stark victory had not come this way. Good. She stood, tugged the gelding's reins, and led him toward the steeper climb. Cliff swallows swooped overhead, stitching quick arcs through a sky bruised violet by oncoming storm. Each flap seemed a warning. Hurry. Hush. Follow. Rain arrived not as gentle mist, but as sudden lances, cold needles that pricked skin through wool. She pulled her hood, but water still found her collar, trickling down spine to meet the belt, where a needle lay sheathed beneath her cloak. Water and steel were old friends to her. She let them converse. Hours blurred. The trail narrowed until Scree slithered away beneath a single misstep, vanishing into chasms echoed only by darkness. At a switchback too tight for the gelding's stride, Arya dismounted, led him by the bridle, and whispered praise to keep his courage. Another 100 paces, and they reached a wind-cut shelf where cedar roots clutched stone like wizened fingers. There she found a cave mouth, half hidden behind a jutting fang of quartz. Sentries too cunning to post torches might still watch. Bandits or worse. But the cave gnawed so deep into the cliff the evening gloom surrendered little of its secrets. She tethered the gelding under an overhang and slipped inside alone, needle readied. The ceiling dipped low. Stalactites dripped centuries-old tears. She counted her breaths to still the pounding blood in her ears. 1, 2, 3, quiet. 4, 5. Still quiet. The air smelled only of damp lichen and wolf prints too stale to matter. Satisfied, she returned for saddle bundles and bedroll, then built a guttering fire from moss-dried cedar scraps. Flames licked the cave walls, revealing pale mineral veins like frozen lightning. She ate sparingly. Hard biscuit and a strip of smoked trout she had filched from a Lannisport stall. The bread crumbled into gritty crumbs she fed to a patient mouse that crept close, whiskers twitching. Its tiny eyes caught firelight with uncanny intelligence, as though it too listened for tidings from the sunset edge. When she reached to stroke its back, it squeaked once and fled into cracks, vanishing with her regrets in its tail. Rain hammered outside, a constant roar. She unrolled her map, patched scraps stitched by old town cartographers, river courses drawn true, coastal outlines guessed. West of the arbor, west of the lonely light, the parchment fell blank, save for vague calligraphy. Here there be leviathans, here roam children of the foam. She pictured the emptiness as a vast, hungry mouth. The letter came next. She read its dozen words again, searching margins for hidden marks. Bran's handwriting had changed since they were children. Spidery, yes, but the loops now angled like broken antlers, suggesting haste or weakness. She remembered scant glimpses of him these last years. The boy king pale in wheeled chair, cheeks hollowed by visions men could only fear. Sometimes his eyelids fluttered, seeing far. Sometimes his lips moved, breathing centuries. If he called her home, some thread tugged by ravens and weirwood roots must lie taut indeed. Home, Bowie. Winterfell's snows, Joan's laughter, Sansa's gentle chiding, the clamor of smithies, forging drake iron nails. She loved them, and yet the road still beckoned, an unquenched fever. Even Nymeria's pull felt like a horizon rather than a hearth. She folded the letter, tucked it inside her jerkin. Answers would come when her blades found them. Sleep stole upon her after the fire died to embers. She dreamed of wolves carving paths on glass seas, their paws leaving wakes of starlight, and at their head ran a great she-wolf crowned with red leaves. When she turned to look back, her eyes were Bran's, pupils pale, seeing through worlds. He opened his mouth to speak, but a tide of black water flooded between them, severing sound. She woke before dawn. The storm had broken, leaving the air sharp and new. Mist clung to the cave mouth. She brewed pine needle tea in a dented tin cup, sipped, and felt aches ease. Her knee throbbed only faintly. Donnell's herbs worked. Gratitude warmed her chest. She saddled the gelding, tossed the spent ash into the breeze, and resumed the climb. Past mid-morning, the trail crested a spur that overlooked the sunset sea itself. A boundless, shimmering plain punctuated by cloud shadows, galloping slow over swell. Far below, a narrow ribbon of white surf crashed against basalt. She dismounted and gazed west until salt stung her cracked lips. Somewhere beyond that horizon waited the threat Bran feared. Perhaps beyond, too, lay the last corners of the map she longed to walk. A gull's cry jerked her from reverie. Not a gull. Too guttural. She spun, fingers on needle. Riders crested the switchback behind her. 4 men clothed in patchwork cloaks, faces half covered by dyed wool scarves. One brandished a hooked axe, another knocked an arrow already halfway drawn. The lead rider's cloak bore faded red stripes, dismantled shirts or bloodstains she could not tell. His eyes glimmered with intent. "Well met, traveler," he called, voice casual enough to belie menace. "Roads taxed beyond this point." 5 silver stags each head, horse counts double. Arya eyed their tack. Cracked girths, cobbled stirrups, no house sigil. Bandits. She considered the cliff at her back, the distance to her gelding, her knee. 4 against 1, but a narrow pass. They could come only 2 abreast. Calculation replaced fear. The arrow annoyed her most. "I pay no toll," she replied. The archer sneered. "Then bleed it." He loosed. Arya sprang sideways. The shaft whistled past, slicing her cloak's hem. She landed crouched, drew needle in a single motion, and flicked her wrist. The thin blade flew end over end. Not a water dancer's throw. But the short distance compensated. Needle's point buried itself in the archer's shoulder seam. He shrieked, dropping bow as blood spurted. Before surprise faded, Arya snatched her dagger, rushed. The pass narrowed exactly as she predicted. Hook-axe-man lunged. She dove low, slashed his horse's knee. The animal screamed, reared. The rider toppled into scree. She rose beneath the horse's neck, jammed dagger upward into exposed belly. Warm entrails spilled, and the beast folded with a guttural groan, pinning its master beneath iron shoes. The lay bandit drew scimitar. Arya felt time slow, each raindrop from tree limbs glimmering. He swung a wide arc, aimed to cleave her from collar to hip. She ducked under, planted boot in his stirrup, seized his wrist, and used momentum to vault behind him onto the saddle's cantle. He cursed, twisting to throw her off. She punched the dagger hilt into his ear. He sagged. She kicked free, and he tumbled lifeless from the saddle. Eyes rolled white. Needles still quivered in the archer's shoulder. He scrabbled back, squealing. Arya advanced, retrieving her blade in one swift jerk. He fainted. Only one rider remained, a youth not 20, cheeks blotched with terror. He turned mount and fled uphill. Arya let him go. Dead men told no tales, but frightened men spread lessons. She wiped blades on the dead horse's mangy haunch and dragged carcasses off the trail to deter scavengers that might spook travelers. She stripped coin purses, 19 coppers, 3 silvers, and 2 cracked garnets. Hardly bounty, but travel demanded coin. She found a waterskin sloshing sour ale and left it. Remounting, she whispered apology to her own gelding for the gore smell, then urged him onward. The climb eased into high moorland battered by brisk winds. Sparse heather clung in purple mats, buzzing with late bees. As the sun tipped west, toward that seductive horizon, she spotted a line of old menhirs straddling the ridge. Carvings weathered by millenniums still lingered, spirals, eyes, and the elongated silhouettes of antlered figures. Children of the forest, or first men. She traced one spiral with her thumb, and cold seeped into her bones despite sunlight. Ancient watchers. At dusk, the moor dropped into fertile upland valleys where lambs bleated from stone pens and smoke curled from humble crofts. She smelled mutton stew and ash. Small folk glanced up wary at a lone traveler, but returned to chores without challenge. She pressed until twilight, then found a shepherd's hut abandoned for the summer grazing. Inside, bundles of dried rushes, still sweet with scent, formed a rough pallet. She barricaded the single door with a staff, set a ward of tiny bells, brave Vosi trick, and slept clothed. Dreams returned. A ship of living wood sailing black water under a bleeding moon, its prow carved into a wolf's head, whose eyes burned blue fire. She stood at the bow, hand on a wheel shaped of twisted roots. Somewhere deep within the hull, voices chanted, a language older than Valyria, syllables falling like stones into deep wells. A shadow rose from the water, mountain tall, crowned with ribs of living coral. It reached for the ship with arms woven of kelp and whalebone. And when it spoke, Bran's voice emerged from its abyssal jaws. No crown is so heavy as the one carved by tides. She awoke before dawn, heart hammering. Moisture beaded her brow despite cool air. She roused the gelding, broke fast on stewed barley she found sealed in a clay pot, likely the shepherd's winter stores. But survival demanded small thefts, and left 2 silver stags beneath a flat stone in payment. By mid-morning, she reached a small sept at a crossroads, where 3 trader caravans had camped. Potters fired thin-walled jars in earthen kilns. Cloth merchants hawked bolts of indigo flax. A Tyrell minstrel sang of Margary's garden triumphs. Arya purchased a straw-colored cloak to replace her torn one, then hovered near a parchment seller copying proclamations. One sheet caught her eye, sealed in pink wax with a stag crowned by flames, bearing King Bran's sigil beneath the 6-pointed star. She hired a copper to read its contents aloud. The scribe squinted. Proclamation from the crown. It is decreed that all lords, landed knights, and free companies shall lend succor to royal agents traveling on king's business. By order of Lord Protector Davos Seaworth, Hand of the King. The man shrugged, pocketed his coin. Succor. Done. The word tasted odd. She tucked the parchment inside her vest. It might open doors sealed to a mere traveler. She procured oats for the gelding, salt pork for herself, and asked quietly if any ship captains passed this road. A smuggler named Torlek, bound for the Shield Islands, had lost 3 deckhands to Flux. Said a potter's wife, he'd pay for replacements. Arya thanked her, memorized directions to the port of Casey 2 days south, and turned her gelding along a cart-rutted lane that wove through apple orchards buzzing with harvest flies. The pace slowed under humid afternoon heat. Sweat slicked beneath her jerkin. Orchard's sweet rot mingled with horse musk. She let her mind drift toward water's pull. Sailing west required more than will. It required a craft swift, provisions stout, charts beyond Maesterken. Torlek's shallop might reach the Shield Coast, but to cross open sunset waters demanded bigger hulls and bolder hearts. She would have to convince or commandeer. At a stream ford she knelt to scoop water and glimpsed her reflection. Dirt streaked her cheeks. The half-helm's chafe reddened her brow. Wolf, child, killer, wanderer, all layered in the face of a woman nearly grown. She traced the scar on her chin, earned at Harrenhal, and smiled at the memory of hot pie burning bread shapes. Ghosts abided in features. She honored them with that smile, then rinsed grime away. Nightfall found her at a decrepit inn called the Sailor's Tongue, more lean-to than inn, perched beside an old quarry-flooded emerald. The hostess, a barrel-shaped woman with missing ear, served onion broth and barley bread. Arya sat at a scarred trestle table and listened. Merchants grumbled of raiders striking villages between Fair Isle and Tarbeck. Men dressed in seaweed cloaks who struck from longboats painted like whale skulls. Small folk whispered the raiders took only children under 10, leaving parents alive to wail. Some said ironborn resurgence. Others claimed monsters draped in living coral. The talk soured ale's taste, yet Arya leaned closer to each telling, piecing patterns. An old man with moon-white beard stoked the hearth and swore he'd seen such a longboat at dusk. Prow carved into snarling maw, sails gray as sharkskin. He claimed it rode waters too shallow for keel, as if lifted by unseen hands. Laughter met the tale, but Arya noted how laughter thinned into worry. She rose, approached. Where was this sighting? He peered at her. 3 nights gone. Off Pebble Bay. Nobody but fools sails after moonrise. I saw a torch glow dance upon waves. Then the boat slid off, silent as driftwood, leaving cold behind, cold like winter steel. He shivered. She slipped him a silver stag. Thank you. At her table, she etched a rough map and spilled ale using fingernail tip. Pebble Bay lay south of Case by a day's sail. The pattern of raids formed a crescent bending toward the Shield Isles, toward Old Town perhaps, or farther. Whoever prowled those waters skirted coasts like a hound testing kennel walls for weakness. Sleep came fitful, disturbed by distant owl calls echoing cross quarry. At first light she departed. The road descended into coastal scrub, dotted by wind-bent pines and weathered standing stones. Salt tang thickened. By midday, slate roofs of KC gleamed ahead, hugging a natural harbor, shaped like a crescent moon devouring sunlit tide. Dock cranes creaked, gulls swooped between riggings. Fishing trawlers bobbed beside broader beamed cogs flying reach merchant pennants. War galleys. No, she saw none. Only a single patrol cutter with king's colors moored at the outmost pier. She stabled the gelding, secured lodging in a loft above a chandlery where boiled whale oil leaked pungent fumes, then sought Torlek on the wharf. The smuggler proved easy. A squat man missing 2 fingers, arm tattooed with kraken devoured by swordfish. He eyed her warily. "Deckhands must haul nets, clean bilge," he grunted. "You'd last half a bell." "I can outpull drunks twice your size," she answered, flexing. "And I bring letter of royal passage." She flashed Brand's proclamation. His brows knit. "Royal business harbors trouble. Better trouble from a king than from the things raiding your shores." He spat brine. "You know of them. I know they steal children. And I know our coasts grow colder nights they pass." Torlek studied the water, dark swells churning though breeze lay calm. "Leave by dawn," he said. "We sail to the Shield, then south. Past that, I make no promise. But bear me on. It's enough." He glanced her blades. "Keep those below deck till needed. Dragons muck the wind when steel glints under stars." Her brow rose. "You've seen dragons?" "No," he muttered, turning. "But something burns ships out there. Sails left floating like charred leaves. Fire with no smoke." He stalked off. Arya inhaled salt-laden air deeper than lungs wished, then turned to the harbor mouth where sunset painted the horizon, a molten orange. Far beyond that glow, ancient shapes waited, shifting beneath waves. She felt it in her marrow. A stirring older than Targaryen flame, older than children's crystals. Bran did not exaggerate. That night she dined aboard Torlek's vessel, the Foam Fang, a 2-masted carrack patched with mismatched oak. Crewless hammocks swayed, a silent testament to plague deaths. She poured stew into wooden bowls, while Torlek filled casks with fresh water. 2 other green recruits reported. A freckled farm boy and a thin woman whose eyes tracked every shadow. Arya introduced herself as Naira. Names were wind on open sea. Thunder rumbled as clouds gathered like bruised petals. They slept under deck, lulled by hull creaks and rat scurries. Sometime past midnight, Arya woke to a presence, indefinable, a hush so total it pressed her ears. She rose, climbed to deck. Storm clouds knotted overhead, but wind lay dead. Sea-mirrored sky, black on black. At harbor mouth, waters bulged as if something vast rolled beneath. She strained eyes. No lanterns, no keels, just a swell that moved against tide. It passed, heading west, leaving faint wake like mirrored silver. Chill pricked her skin. When she exhaled, breath misted, though summer reigned. Behind her, Torlek emerged holding crossbow. "You saw?" She nodded. "So did I." He whispered hoarse. "We sail at first gray. Gods be good, we'll outrun it. Or hunt it," she murmured. He frowned. "Hunt? We're traders. Traders with empty hammocks. A king's writ, and a wolf aboard." She met his gaze. "The sea pays debts." He hesitated, then spat over rail. "Pray you're worth more than ghosts." Morning came swathed in fog dense as fleece. They cast off, oars churning until sails caught a fickle breeze. The Foam Fang glided past breakwater stones into open water, prow aimed southwest across Pebble Bay de. Arya climbed the bowsprit, perched like gull. Behind, Casey dissolved into mist, its last bell toll swallowed by cloud. The sea world smelled of kelp and secrets. Hours stretched, wave after wave, mid-swell troughs shining glassy under fitful sunbeams. Crew whispered of gray mists that tasted of blood. Arya listened, catalogued, compared to tales of the shivering sea beyond Essos where corpse lights danced. Similar patterns, but this belonged here, newly born. At dusk Torlek barked orders to reef sails as wind freshened. Clouds shredded, revealing sliver moon. Whitecaps winked. Arya helped haul lines, muscles burning pleasantly. After, she stood at stern, led her close to heart. Bran watched through ravens. She felt his gaze like cool hand upon shoulder. A splash sounded starboard. She pivoted. Nothing but swirling foam. Then for a breath, a shimmer beneath surface. Scales catching lunar glow. Too large for fish, too sinuous for dolphin. It vanished, leaving a trail of luminous algae sparkling. "Dragon," whispered the freckled boy near her. "No," she answered softly. "Something older." They sailed 2 days. On the third dawn, shrieks erupted above deck. Arya burst from hold, blades naked. Ahead, fog thinned to reveal flotsam. Charred spars, shredded sailcloth, a child's wooden horse bobbing. Foamfang slowed. Silence dripped like pitch. No bodies, only ash-lined water. Torlek cursed. "Indigo Company cog," he muttered, pointing to a scorched ensign snagged on mast stump. "They left Fair Isle a day before us." Arya scanned horizon. Nothing but gray sea rolling. Yet, stone-deep dread mounted. She knelt, scooped water, still warm. "Bring the boat about," she ordered. "We follow burn scent. It leads to them." Torlek sneered. "And feed them our bones? Royal writ demands." She flashed the parchment. "But more, if this threat reaches coast, it will not spare smugglers. We learn, or we die ignorant." He weighed fear, then spat. "Prepare the grapnels. Any survivors we find, they owe their purses." Evening fell before they sighted smoke pillar etched against crimson sunset. They approached under shortened canvas. Wreckage drifted. Dories rent by force. Barrels cracked. Then the source emerged. A lumbering hulk aglow with blue flame. Hull charred, yet not consumed. The fire licked timber but gave no smoke, emitting icy shimmer, frost-rimmed edges. Impossible. Flame without heat. Frost without cold. Torlek shivered despite wool cloak. Arya felt her breath steam. She ordered grapnels tossed. Crew hauled Foamfang alongside. The heatless blue fire receded as they neared, shrinking into vein-like fissures along planks. She slung rope, swung aboard wreck. Deck sagged underfoot, but wood held. Splintered crates bespoke hurried flight. No corpses. A shriek cut darkness below deck. Arya dashed, Torlek on her heel reluctantly. Hold stank of brine and something fouler, rot kelp and bile. She heard weeping. Lantern raised, she turned corner and found 3 children huddled beside a shattered cage of weirwood latticework. Their eyes reflected lantern shine with inhuman pallor, pupils rimmed by silver filaments. One girl clutched the bar remnants as though they had been cell bars. All wore small clothes only, skin mottled with frost burns. Arya knelt, gentle. "I'm Arya. You're safe now." The eldest boy, no more than 9, blinked slow. "Cold men," he whispered. They sang the sea open and walked through. "Where are your parents?" "Gone." Tears froze upon his lashes, tiny pearls cracking. "They took Papa's voice, put it in the box." He pointed to a seawater-soaked chest, rimmed by glyphs carved with coral dust. The lid lay askew. Inside, nothing but darkness deeper than night, swirling like ink. Torlek stepped back. "Sorcery," he hissed. Arya reached yet, felt wind coil forth. Wind that smelled of deepest trenches, salt layered over ancient decay. She shut the lid. Glyphs shimmered faint blue, then died. "Bring the children," she said. "Burn the rest." Crew hesitated but obeyed. They ferried the children aboard Foamfang. Arya lifted the chest with help, bound it in heavy tarpaulin, and lashed it to cargo hold far from crew bunks. Then she scattered oil and spark torch. The wreck exhaled a gout of ordinary flame, releasing a shrill note like ice cracking. Blue rivulets hissed, turned white, then vanished. When they cast off, the hulk burned orange behind until waves swallowed embers. Night deepened. Stormless, wind steady. Arya sat with the children near brazier, feeding them broth. their eyes already darkened to normal hue, silver lines fading. She coaxed tails. Raiders wearing reef bone masks came at night in boats that rowed without oars yet left wakes of mirrored glass. They sang, and water rose like stair to their deck. Adults fell asleep standing. Children were herded into cages lined with black coral. The raiders touched no iron, wielded blades that steamed frost. They said the children would cross to the deep shade reaches, where the Old One waited. One child recalled a word, Leviathan Daughton. Arya listened, memory tingling. Old Nan spoke of leviathans that swallowed sons. Maesters dismissed as sailors' nonsense. Yet Frostfire and empty voices felt real enough. She left Torlek to soothe crew, descended to hold. The chest sat still, bleached canvas wet with salty condensation. She drew needle, slit bindings. The lid thrummed under palm. She pictured old blood magic runes on Bravos' temple of the Moonsinger, glow triggered by breath. She inhaled, exhaled over glyphs. They ignited faint azure. She opened lid a finger width. A whisper seeped. Not sound but absence. Utter hush devouring every creak, every rat scuttle. She glimpsed swirling black flecked by distant star points, as if the chest contained night sky itself. A face formed within void. Elongated, eyes white as new ice, mouth sealed by coral strands. It stared without pupils yet pierced her mind. A wave of longing crashed. Come, said no voice. Yet the urge to leap into darkness nearly overwhelmed. She slammed lid. Breath ragged. The azure glow faded. She locked the chest with chain, looped thrice and padlocked. Then upon its lid, she traced with chalk the secret sigil the faceless men used to bind restless spirits. 2 circles intersected by vertical line. The pearl mask. Chalk dust turned gray, then inert. She exhaled. Above deck, stars wheeled. She found Torlek at helm. It's worse than raiders, she said. Something old rides them. He nodded once. King's Mouth Lighthouse lies 2 days east. We'll steer there, send Raven to Old Town. No. Her gaze fixed west. We sail toward Lonely Light. The trail points deeper. He laughed bitter. You want me dead. I want answers. And I carry royal writ. You vowed. Then? Torlek gripped rail. After long silence he said, one day to Lonely Light. If seas stay calm, we push. After that, gods decide. She clapped his shoulder. Gods favor the brave. Gods feast on them, more like. He spat, but resumed watch. She relieved him at midnight. Sea hummed with unnerving calm. She studied horizon, seeking tremors. Behind, children slept. Safe for now. At dawn, Foamfang passed small skerries where seals barked. Wind turned colder than north gales despite latitude. Crew murmured of ghosts climbing waves. Arya warmed hands on kettle, eyes scanning waterskin for unnatural shapes. Twice she thought she saw dark slivers spike then vanish. Fins. Coral towers. By noon they sighted Lonely Light. A needle of stone crowned by lighthouse flame, last outpost of Ironborn West. Smoke curled from rooftops, encircling tower base. As they approached, horrors greeted. Docks splintered, ships burned to waterline, bodies strung across breakwater. Ironborn raiders gutted, eyes glassy. Some corpses bore reefbone masks, others wore kraken sigils. Blood drained into tide like red ink. Foamfang anchored cautiously. No living soul hailed. Arya led a landing party, Torlek, 2 sailors, the thin-eyed woman. They stepped ashore onto planks sticky with gore. The silence pressed more than screams would. They followed drag marks toward storeroom caves bored into cliff. Inside, dozens of empty cages, identical to the hulks. No children. At lighthouse foot, a sigil burned into granite. Spiral of 9 arms, each arm curled inward like whirlpool. The line still smoked, carved by heat beyond forge. Arya touched stone, it chilled bone beneath flesh. She knelt, closed eyes, listened for echoes of many-faced God. Only ocean's pulse answered. But it carried strange cadence, heartbeat of something vast. Torlek cursed. "We leave now." "Ahead lies only darkness," said the thin-eyed woman. Lantern oil low, crew restless. Arya rose. "We cannot turn back without knowing where they go next." Torlek pointed seaward. "Look." West-southwest. Horizon bulged. A fog bank loomed, menacing dark green where sun should gild. Lightning flickered inside, but left no thunder. From its base rose towers, silhouettes stark, organic, twisting like spines of giants growing from water. An entire city drifting. Foamfang's crew scrambled, terror rampant. Arya's heart hammered yet thrilled. Destiny's mouth yawning. She smelled Nymeria's fur, Bran's raven wings, old gods rustling leaves. "We sail," she said. Torlek's eyes widened. "Into that?" She nodded. "Into that." He wiped sweat, resigned. "All hands weigh anchor," he roared, then muttered, "Mad wolves lead men to doom." Foamfang creaked under strain. Sails billowed. The water darkened, oily, but wind held. They slid toward the living fog while behind them lonely light shrank, its beacon extinguished midday as if doused by unseen breath. Hours vanished. The fog swallowed sun, leaving world ash. Crew tied lanterns, yet light barely pierced. The sea stilled, then vibration tremored through hull. Deep thrumming like drum inside mountain. Shapes emerged, colossal spires of coral black stone, ringed by lattice bridges where figures paced, humanoid yet elongated, clad in shells and seaweed. Eyes glowed faint blue. They watched the Foamfang drift. Arya stood at prow, needle shimmering. "Hail!" she called across mirrored water. No answer, but a low note echoed, reverberating skull bones. The water parted as something surfaced. A leviathan head wider than their ship, scaled plates like obsidian shards, each rimmed with frost. It gazed with lidless pale eyes, and when it exhaled, vapor washed deck with rime. Torlek screamed, "Turn, gods!" Arya lifted Bran's letter, shouting, "I am Arya Stark of Winterfell, blood of the first men. Speak!" The leviathan's mouth opened, not jaws, but blooming petals of bone revealing a chamber of swirling stars. Soundless words formed within her mind. "Daughter of Wolf, why seek the abyssal throne?" She gripped rail. "Because my brother dreams your coming, and I guard his realm." The leviathan's eyes narrowed. Memories, old as the Dawn Age, streamed. Shackled giants forging tides, children singing storms, Valyria's doom birthing cracks that bled into deep trenches. In every memory, the spiral symbol burned. Then voice, "The never-drowned rises. Lands of warm blood will feed its spawn. Wolves howl in vain unless fang pierce heart reef. Come, carry this warning east." The creature submerged, waves rocking Foamfang. Fog thinned, revealing nothing but quiet sea. Coral spires gone like mirage. The cold lifted. Stars blinked overhead. Crew collapsed sobbing. Arya exhaled, strength spent. Torlek approached, shakily. "Did we dream?" She shook head. "No." "What now?" She gazed east where dawn's first hints glazed horizon. "We sail home. War comes from beneath, and Winterfell must stand ready." Torlek nodded, fear trimmed by purpose. "East, then." He shouted orders. Sails turned. Foamfang caught wind, carving foamy trail back toward waking world. Below deck, the chest pulsed faint blue, chalk sigil cracking. Arya felt it tremble. The voice stolen from Pebble Bay prisoner yearning to return to deep. She knelt beside, murmured North prayers, and vowed. Not yet. She would deliver it to Bran, and together they would listen. Above, gulls cried herald of sunrise. Arya returned to deck. Orange streaks seared sky, promising both hope and reckoning. She tightened cloak, inhaled brine, and smiled that hard, bright smile. The horizon ahead stretched wide, but a wolf's road widened wider, and in her wake, an ancient music stirred, uncoiling, awaiting clash of fang and tide.